Okay, in this video, I'd like to talk more about point sourcing the magnetic field against the dielectric field in order to cause rotation. This is what is driving everything in the solar system, and this is how the craft are being operated. These are principles that science still doesn't understand, but I'm going to explain here today what's going on. Let's get started. Okay, the first thing you have to understand in the equation is that the Earth is a giant magnet, and it's spinning to the left through space over 1,000 miles an hour. You and everything that you see in the visible light spectrum in matter are all being held together by the glue of magnetism. So you and everything else that you see in the visible light spectrum in matter are stuck to the planet because the planet's a giant magnet, and so are you. So in order to break the pull of the Earth, you must either jump or fly a plane or shoot a rocket to escape the pull of the Earth, but you're always going to want to be pulled back down because you're made of magnetism. That's the glue that's holding your subatomic hydrogen together. So once you know that fact, you can go into this whole thing and understand what's going on. Okay, the shape of the tetrahedron represents harmony and equilibrium. It's at rest or at zero, so there's no stress or no strain in the tetrahedron. So that's why it's at this 0 point between space and counter space, between magnetism and between dielectricity, because this shape always has its foot both in space and counter space simultaneously. So it's the same as electricity. Electricity always has presence in space and counter space simultaneously. So the tetrahedron, when this thing starts rotating, and this is the key, everything in the matter universe is moving and rotating. So when this thing starts rotating to the right clockwise, it starts producing visible light until the visible light reaches a point of matter. And then once it reaches that, it continues up, up, up until it's off the scale and then returns all the way back down here. So what's going on is when this shape is spun to the left, okay, when your tetrahedron is spun to the left, then it would start going down the scale and you would dematerialize because it's spinning counterclockwise towards counter space. Okay, here you would have time. As you would progress down toward the 0 point, you would be out of time and out of visible light because you're into pure dielectricity, you're into ether. Where this spin to the right is 1.618 producing matter or reality. That's the Fibonacci to the right, clockwise. When it is counterclockwise, spun to the left, it's 0.618, dematerializing. So here would be your matter spin to the right. Here would be your antimatter spin to the left. So what they're doing for the rotational spin of the craft is the same thing that the universe is doing with its black holes in the center of the galaxies. Everything's revolving around those black holes. It works like this. In a naturally occurring state of a magnet, just like this ring magnet here, it's working just like the Earth is working. All the magnetism is on the outside. On the inside center of this thing, there's 0G, 0 Gauss. 0 magnetism, 0 light, because it's a black hole. So on the outside would be your white hole, and on the inside would be your black hole. So what's going on is the same thing that the Earth is doing. On the inside, there is complete dielectricity. There's zero G, zero Gauss. On the outside is all your magnetism. What they're doing is they're using the shape of the toroid for the magnetism, and they're fighting it against the shape of the hyperboloid of counter space. Okay, so you're taking space, something that has frequency, something that has a waveform, and you're fighting it against something that has no frequency like DC, that doesn't have a waveform. So you're taking magnetism against dielectricity, and you're fighting them. In the state of this magnet here, this state would represent equilibrium or harmony. This is how things naturally flow. When you turn this inside out and invert it is when you can get your differential, because you're causing a fight. So you would put the dielectricity on the outside and the magnetism on the inside. This is what an AC generator does, according to Ken Wheeler. So what it looks like is this. This would be something naturally occurring and in harmony, this shape here. Tetrahedron up, tetrahedron down, with the plane of inertia in between. This is a shape of something that's at rest, that's stability. When you invert this shape, meaning you take these points and now you point them against each other and cause them to go to war, you're now warring the fields of magnetism against dielectricity. When you do this, you create rotation at this 0 point when you pulse the fields. So an impulse will send those fields fighting each other, and this is where you're able to draw out your energy. So the whole thing is called point sourcing because of these points, these apexes right here, with the plane of inertia in between, or that event horizon between the white hole and between the black hole, because you're fighting electromagnetism versus dielectricity. You're fighting light versus dark. These are polar opposites, but nothing is polar. Nothing's a duality. It's all working off this triplicate deal of magnetism, dielectricity, plane of inertia. So when you fight the fields, you are causing this to happen, and this is how my magnetic system works. Okay, you're making one magnet the magnetism side, and then the other would be the dielectricity side. So you're making these things go to war with each other at this 0 point. So what I've done in my system is you take a shape of stability, like a tetrahedron up, a tetrahedron down, harmony at rest, and you fight it against another magnet that's made up of these two L's pressed together because this one's repelling each other. So I'm putting natural stress or strain into the shape of the tetrahedron. So this would represent the complete opposite. This would be counter space or dielectricity. This would be your magnetism. So when you war those two fields against each other and pulse them, once they lock up in the correct spot, you'll get your rotation. And all you have to do is pump the field just a little bit, and it'll drive the wheel all day. And that is what is driving all the planets in the solar system. Same thing. So what Otis T. Carr was doing back in the 40s and 50s when he was designing his discs, his UFOs were using the principle of a wheel on its side rotating, because he figured out that once you break the rotational speed of the earth relative to the size of your craft, you could lift off and become an independent system. So what he's doing too is the same thing. He is using the shape of space, the toroid, and fighting it against the shape of counter space, the hyperboloid. See that triangle there? And the triangle there? This is what he's trying to achieve. Right here is this. See this triangle here? This would be your dielectricity fighting your magnetism. They don't like each other. See, they want to repel each other. The dielectricity wants to repel the magnetism. That's how you get anti-grav. That's how you break the pull of the earth. You war the fields. Because it's no different than having a high pressure and a low pressure, or a hot and a cold, and making those two things fight along the 0 point. You're causing stress or strain because you got two extremes. So when you invert these points, this is how you draw out and get rotation. Because you have to have a differential. You have to have a high and a low. This is how they're causing the weather fronts to happen around the country and around the world. By engineering it. They're taking a high pressure, putting it against a low pressure, and the outcome is always wind. That's the effect. So that's how this whole thing is working. If you haven't seen my other videos, please check them out. I go into all of this stuff in more detail. Thanks for watching.